Welcome, everybody, to the latest edition of the Scholar Gypsies. I'm delighted today to have a fellow Substacker on with me, um, Demi Pietchell. I probably already mispronounced, but here we go. From the Substack Starfire Codes. I've been following this Substack now for secretly for about 3 or 4 months, and I wanted to get Demi on here to talk about her work, but also and a lot of it has a spiritual element to it, and we're going to be discussing a two-part series of writing that she's done on nostalgia later on. But welcome, Demi. How are you? And maybe you could just give everyone a brief kind of background on yourself and the work you do on Substack.
Sure. My background is in media. It's in filmmaking and digital marketing, social media, mostly in the form of content creation. And I split off from doing that for years to go out on my own and start writing and producing content for myself. So that's how this came about. I had an interest in metaphysics and consciousness that sort of grew over time. I started out life atheist, and I ended up switching when I was 35. I had watched a lot about quantum physics and taken a lot in about that, and I kind of flipped on a dime. I was like, okay, I had that part wrong, and that was it. For a lot of other people, it was very difficult for them to take in that I had changed. So that was interesting to go through to see how their reactions to that, came into play when mine was just, okay, this is something I didn't know. This is something I needed to take into consideration. And now that I have better information, I'm going to pivot and move from there. So that's how I got into all of this. I started to get into channeling and divination, and I write a lot about consciousness. And so that's the Starfire Codes, and you can find that on Substack.
Yeah, and we'll link to it in this Substack when this goes out as well. I'm just curious there when you said you said you were you were an atheist. Was there a
Mhm.
moment, or was that a process where you kind of flipped? Or can you remember? Can you remember the trigger point, or was there a trigger point for you?
It's interesting because I think that people don't understand, what prayer is and what having a dialogue with the divine really is. Because someone actually asked me that question because I said that I had started out life. I couldn't remember a time when I was an atheist. And he said to me, but Demi, children believe that's what they do. They believe in Santa Claus, they believe in the Tooth Fairy, they believe in the Easter Bunny. How did you come through not believing? And automatically knee-jerk reaction, I said, God doesn't answer prayers. So it was my perception of that when I would ask, or something would happen, that I would have I wouldn't have any feedback coming in because I was not counseled on how to establish a conversation, an ongoing, two-way dialogue with the divine. And I think that shifted me in the direction of thinking that wasn't possible. And later on, I realized it was.
Very interesting. Um, I suppose the one of the things I wanted to, I suppose we can introduce it at this point is a lot of my own writing, and you've done a very good two-part piece on nostalgia and the role it can play, because often we think of nostalgia, when I think of it, my writing is inflected with kind of a certain nostalgia on periods of my life, particularly around my teenage years, and then another period of life when I was maybe 8 or 10 years older. Um, and I'm very interested in the way you look at it, because you kind of look at it as nostalgia as being the soul's compass. I was wondering if you could maybe go into that a little bit.
Sure. The integration of our past, our present, and our future into a state where we are present constantly brings us into that sort of integration with ourselves. And when we are living in mentally in a place that we can't get back to, it creates this chasm, this discrepancy between what we're experiencing and what we used to experience. And that disconnect um, takes us out of alignment and creates a sort of feeling of sadness of something that we can't get back to. And there is no way of getting back to that because there are so many different factors involved in encompassing that time. I mean, whether it's, cultural, generational, the fact that you don't live in that place anymore, the same people don't live there, whatever that is personally. But then also, and part one of the series was about the personal aspects of that, and part two of the series was more about the cultural impact of that we have on a wider scale. But all of it comes back to integrating these different parts and different pieces that we feel separated from. And I was really focused upon that as I was writing each bit because I felt like that was the common thread there.
And yeah, like in one part of that article, or I think it was the personal article, the idea that we are throughout our lives, there's different versions of ourselves, if you like, and
Mhm.
um quite often we don't know, and we can anchor ourselves to maybe a childhood house. It could be, in Irish case, it might be like a particular pub or place a collective would gather, and it held a certain value, or we recognize a certain value in that thing or place. Now it can be I want to just kind of ask it in terms of trauma. Is there is not is are we not can we be nostalgic towards our own traumas through periods of our life?
Absolutely, especially if it's what's familiar to you, just in the same way that you're drawn to people who exhibit the familiar. You can be drawn to events and places that have that familiar aspect, and it's just something that's ingrained that makes it feel like home to you because it's something that you experienced and something that you keep getting drawn back to. In the case of culturally, we've been so displaced from our roots that a lot of the time when we see these things that harken back to like other futures we could have had, we get that kind of a feeling to it too. So we are split off from ourselves in that way. Even, just for instance, because so many people are familiar with it, the projection of the future that we had based on the 1950s and what things would look like now, or what things would look like, according to what we saw in the movie Back to the Future. People bring that up a lot. I was promised flying cars, like all of these kinds of things, like by now we should have had this, and they
Hmm.
get invested in that and they have a nostalgia for a future that never was.
Hmm.
So
Yeah,
that
yeah.
becomes interesting too.
And in terms of based on what you've written on those on that, sh- would you be saying that we should kind of look at nostalgia as a tool that we use to integrate ourselves into the present, or maybe not phrasing that right, but um, as to what how the integration process in the present of that, how does that manifest, or how do you manifest it?
And you can see if you're having those types of feelings, you can trace them back to where they came from. And then you are able to reel that back in to integrate it to yourself. So if you know that you're projecting a future that you never got to experience, and that you're emotionally invested in that future, for instance, you can start to track back to what is, as opposed to trying to get to there from what should be, which creates a discrepancy. And if it's to the future of things that never were, it can pull up either sadness or a sort of anxiety, like I'm not to where I thought I should be by now, that kind of anxiety. So that would be the discrepancy there. But you can take how you feel and use that as a compass to guide you back to yourself, to what is, and then you can get to an actual future on the timeline that you're on from there. But you have to reel that back in first and not be emotionally attached to a future or a past that never was or that you can't get back to.
And a path you can't take, like a
Hmm.
path you can't take by virtue of the fact it's in the past, I suppose. But the feelings from that period can be kind of used to plot your course going forward, like the learnings from that to plot your course going forward, basically.
Absolutely. Yeah. So if you're cognizant of those feelings and the fact that you have them and you look into why, you can track it back to an experience that you had, or an experience that you wished you had, or a direction that you wished things would have gone, but they didn't. And then you're able to reel yourself back in from there, knowing that that what you're experiencing is not on the trajectory of where you can go, but you come back to center, and then you realize that, and then you're able to move forward from there once you recenter.
Hmm. So, in terms of your own kind of spiritual path, I suppose what I feel that 2024 is a very important year spiritually, above a lot of, we'll say, even the past 3 or 4 years, um, and that there's almost a feeling that there's a kind of um, a split at a global, at a humanity level as to um, a spiritual path that needs to be taken in whatever sense you're taking it, whatever ways or means you're examining yourself spiritually. And if you don't, that almost you're looking at these types. When I'm looking around at the moment, it's almost like I'm looking at a lower vibrational path for humanity versus a higher vibrational one. And I'm just, I suppose, wondering what your thoughts on that might be.
I feel like everyone sort of makes a choice and ends up within their own timeline where their consciousness is experiencing whatever it was that they chose. So you have infinitely many timelines that you could get to from here, from what is. So where you do that whole reeling back in to now, once you're at that point, you can decide where you want to focus your energy to make the future that you want to experience, or to hyper focus in on that future and manifest it, or start to go in the direction of it and start to co-create in the universe, with the universe, in that direction. Right. So different people are going to go in different directions with that, and infinitely many different directions with that. Different versions of you are going in different directions with that. So we're all experiencing everything there is to experience. But your consciousness, who you are in within your body right now, is choosing what you're choosing, and you're headed in that direction. And whatever that ends up being, that thread will be your timeline.
And do you look at it as there being higher levels of consciousness that are out there, like as in we're in a human body here at the moment, and we're trying as much as possible to dial into our correct paths or consciousness. But is that a path that leads to somewhere more, like more elevated consciousness, in your opinion? Or how do you view that kind of thinking?
We're all part of source consciousness. So each of us has our own little compartmentalized chunk of consciousness that's within ourselves, and we're not accessing the other ones, because the point of it is to experience itself, for source to experience itself. So if we're not cut off from what the other ones know, we're not able to do that. So moving through that space in that way makes us able to do that. But then when we come back out of it, then we have more access to whatever there is as a whole. We can get to it from in here, but most people aren't taught that, and they don't know it exists. So it's very hard for them to even conceptualize of being able to tap into that, which is where where my gifts went in that direction. But I like to emphasize, I'm not special in having them. Everyone has them. It's our human birthright. I may have spent more time, like a runner that decides to go to the Olympics. May have spent more time on it so that I'm able to use it in a better, more efficient way. But everyone can do it. In fact, 80% of people on their first try remote viewing, they get a hit. So it's it's just part of, once you have the techniques and the understanding of it, you're able to do it. You're able to tap into that, and that is just all of us together. It's all of the energy of all of our consciousness together, and that's what you're accessing.
Okay, so when you move into talking about, we'll say, source and whole consciousness,
Mhm.
there we're into what we'll say, you know, others or other, religious types would call God or Allah or whatever it might be
Absolutely.
for them.
Yeah.
And I suppose in the way you process your spirituality, is there a is there a price to be paid for not tapping into your own kind of consciousness?
Oh no, I
And
don't think so. I think we're all still learning. So, and that's part of it is to learn as we go. So the more you do end up picking up and learning and moving forward, great, but we have forever, literally. So whatever your chunk of consciousness is learning at that point is what you're supposed to be learning at that point. And it's not for anyone else to judge higher, lower, better, worse. We need to learn all of it. And that's why we're doing it. And I think that the reasoning behind that is to reintegrate source eventually. So we heal. We're each responsible for healing our own little chunk of source. And then when you put them all back together, you've got a healed and integrated version of everything.
Mhm. How have the last number of years, we'll say the pandemic COVID years, how have the outer world, how have you processed that? And what's it meant for you kind of on a spiritual, has it been challenging spiritually?
Oh, absolutely. But it's, there's lessons and there's rewards. And we have to remember that, like as people are learning different lessons that they're supposed to be learning, we can't move toward doing that for them. It separates them from the experience of having done. So they're not learning then. They're not growing then if we're trying to force that upon them. So we can provide them with information and we can hope that they take it in and we can hope that it's their time to do so, but people will not come to that conclusion until it is their time. And that's a big thing that we're having to learn, to take that step back as teachers even, and to understand that, not every student is going to go in the direction that you think they're going to go or that you think they should, and that's up to them. That's their choice. So a lot of that is about, the people who have learned these things relinquishing any form of control that they feel like they have over others, and learning to step into that, and learning to facilitate and not control.
Do you you're on the east coast of the United States, isn't that correct?
I am.
Um, do you get a sense uh, about, we'll say, technology, AI, and that world as being a challenge to um, we'll say the consciousness, accessing consciousness of tapping into your own consciousness, or even at a grander scale affecting whole consciousness, or how do you see anything problematic there?
I see this in multiple ways. I think that, if you're going to view this as if we are in a sim, let's say, we're already AI. We're different levels of AI. We're AI that's creating AI that's creating AI that's creating AI. And at each iteration, at each step of that, where one is creating something else, there's something destructive that happens within that creation that, that changes things, that tears things apart, and then they have to reheal. So that could be a part of how we ended up compartmentalized, is in having been created by whatever level it was that we were created at, and then broke apart, and then we're trying to fuse ourselves back together while creating something else that's going to blast itself apart.
Mhm.
And we have to keep, following this loop around.
And
We're not.
is that your sense of what is going on?
Yeah, I think so. I think we have older AI and older AI than that, and baby AI, which is what you're seeing that, lower levels of AI have created. It's interesting to think of it in that way, and then eventually, we're scared it's going to take us over, and then there are other aspects of it that could already be running the show that we can't even see, that are in layers above us. As above, so below. We're in a fractal holographic universe. So it stands to reason that anything that we're experiencing at this level has a macro and a micro Absolutely.
Mhm. So, and in terms of then, in terms of that, would you be somebody then that would be conscious of, we'll say, obvious baby AI stuff like your phone, or the I would see a lot of mind control in just the smartphone.
Yeah, and
Um,
it's best to know about it, but we're already, as Elon Musk was putting it when the phones first came out, he was saying that we were already like cyborgs. That's the
yeah.
word that he used because we're already integrated with the phone in that way. We're already using it for everything, to research, to keep our lives in check. And without it, we feel like we're missing a limb. you know
Mhm.
you walk out of the house without it, you're, whoa, uh-oh, I don't have my phone. So it is a part of us at this point, and we've already gotten there because so much of utilization of it has been incentivized.
Mhm.
So you go past that point and you realize that we have these addictions to it, and yeah, that can be exploited. It can be used for good too. If we were using it in the way that it was intended, we would all be studying and researching and coming up with innovations and revolutionizing humanity. We would all be doing that, but we're looking at cat videos.
You mentioned your work there just earlier. Maybe just if we could go into that a little bit in terms of the type of people that would be coming to you for help, and also kind of what the work is that you do.
Sure. Usually, people are coming to me for guidance. A lot of my readings are centered around growth. They're very growth focused. So, I try to pull ideas from many divination tools. I use cards. I use numerology, shufflemancy, which is pulling different songs. If I had to choose one and give up everything else, I would choose the songs, which a lot of
Hmm.
people think is very strange, but it's the way I take in the information, and I'm so immersed in music that it makes the most sense to me the fastest, and I get the most out of it the fastest. So if it were left up to me to just choose one, it would be that. But it's mostly taking what the energy is across the board and getting a read on that, which comes to me as like sort of a texture, and then I'm able to translate that into words for people to understand what I'm seeing in the energies, and then they take their intuition and see how that resonates with them, and that's how the readings work.
Hmm. No, like, and music. I think like music would be one of my top. Like, I would say, if I analyze how long it takes me to write something, and if it was 12 hours, at least 3 hours of that is spent listening to music.
Yeah.
Um, and I think you also referenced it as one of the most powerful nostalgic tools, as well as that there's a lot of, there's imagery, smells, sounds, tastes, kind of embedded in song and that kind of thing. How do you incorporate that into your work, just specifically on the music? Then is that a case where you're sensing the energies and kind of songs come to you, or
Yeah.
with messages, or how does that work?
I use it two ways. So, in one way, I'm pulling songs as they come up. So if I hear a song, if I'm driving and there's a song, if something comes up on my Pandora, something like that, I will store the songs. Now that energy cooks for a long time. Like right now, I'm at a point where the readings are a year after the songs are pulled. There are so many
Okay.
songs pulled, and the intention is set that whatever order they come out in, they will always be relevant to the person that is viewing that at that moment, and with the rest of the different pieces of divination put together. So I don't have any idea how this is going to come together as I'm doing it, which is better. Like I have no clue. I'm not influencing it. I'm just pulling things, and then eventually these are the things I have to look at. What's the message that I'm pulling out of that?
Hmm.
So that's how that part works. Now, over time, I will have certain songs come straight into my head. And that's like the earworm section, the clairaudience section that I use. that's songs that came directly in through my mind, and they end up matching up with what's there. And also the numerology does, the cards do. And the only thing that I do after the fact is sort of like a medicine for the reading, is I'll choose a meditation that fits the theme of the overall read, and I'll put that in there so that people can meditate on the information that they took in, and it makes the experience more of a grounded one, more of a actionable experience than just reading something on a page and kind of relating to it but not having a direction to go in.
So when you say, when you do a reading, and you're picking up on the collective energy, I assume of the people that are watching it's like a video. You do it by video, do you?
Sometimes, but the ones that are on Substack are all done in writing. So you can see all the pieces. They're all done up that
Oh,
way.
okay,
So
okay.
I've got a picture of the cards that I drew. I have a picture of, or I have links to the numerology and what I pulled with that. I'll have a rune on there with a description of the rune. I'll have YouTubes of the different songs that came through. So each reading is like its own playlist on top of that. I'll have memes, like pictorial elements that came through at that period of time. And then I'll just look at the whole thing assembled together. And, I'll lay them in side by side, and then I go back and write the reading. So I don't even know what I'm going to see or what's going to happen. And sometimes people will draw an energy card and send it to me, and it just goes where it fits. So they're influencing the energy of the read overall too. And I have no idea what's going to come out until I sit down with that. And then people will write to me, this is spot on to what I was feeling today. And to me, that means I got out of the way and I presented the message as it needed to be presented. I'm a conduit, so for me, that's not, that I did it so well. It's that I was like able to get out of the way and do my job and present the information as it needed to be presented.
Is it draining on you then, like kind of being the lightning rod for this energy, or
It
the
used to
conduit for?
be for that, and now I just do it. Like, that part doesn't drain me anymore. Other things will. If I'm in one-on-one with somebody and I'm picking up on a specific energy that they need for me to pick up on, that can be draining. I've had messages come through from family members who have passed, things like that. That can be draining. It's not what I usually do, but it will happen, and I will just feel the need to deliver the message, so I just do it. It's not something I plan on. It's not something I sit down and do, but I will have them come through, and when I do, I let people know, and it's usually when I'm already talking to them.
Mm-hmm.
So something will just start to come through into my head, and I'll ask them, I just had something weird, is this relevant to you? And they'll confirm, and then I'll slip into the energy for a bit, pick out what they need, and then come back out of it. But sometimes that can be draining depending upon what it is.
I can imagine, yeah. Just, I suppose, I just go back to, we'll say, when you had your own kind of awakening, spiritually. Can you tell me a little bit about the journey from there, atheist, to now? That's What were your influences, or where was your mind or energy drawn to in your own kind of learning, discovery of yourself, and the path you went?
Well, this was interesting because my mother was really into metaphysics, and my mother always went to psychics, and my mother had the whole house was full of metaphysics books. And me being the little atheist and very precocious and argumentative, I would pick up every last book she brought into the house, read it cover to cover, and then debunk her. And she thought it was hilarious. So she kept buying more books. And she was entertained. Just, that's really funny. Keep doing it.
I'll have
So
my
I
revenge.
did, yeah, and eventually, yeah, but she just thought it was funny, like the way that I would interpret things, and all of the different thoughts that would come out of my head. And she was just like entertained by it. She didn't mean anything by it in one way or another. She just thought I was cute and thought it was funny. So over time, I stayed that way until, it was science that brought me back around to spirituality. I sat down in front of, I want to say it was a lot of quantum physics videos in a row that I was watching, and I was starting to piece together aspects of how consciousness is within matter, and things like that. And just all of a sudden it flashed in. If that is, then that's God, because that's all interconnected energy, and we're influencing that through the way that we perceive it, through the measurement changes according to the perception,
Hmm.
and the choice of that. And it kind of, hit me hard and fast, and I said, okay, I had that wrong. But I just went along with what I was doing. I didn't really, I mean, that's me. I'm gonna pivot on a dime with whatever new piece of information I come at. That, I'm not married to any of it. I want the best information that I could possibly have. Right. So I was like, yes, that's better information, and just went in that direction.
Mm.
Everyone else had a problem with it. So what do you mean you don't believe that anymore? You always said that you did. What do you believe in now? Like, they had to be able to set a watch by me. They felt that way, that I was unpredictable, and they were not okay with that,
Hmm.
which was really interesting. I'm like, I just decided something else. I had other
Yeah.
information, and this is a choice I made.
Hmm.
And they were angry.
Yeah.
Some
Yeah.
people dropped me as a friend over it.
Well, I was just going to ask you because I think no, because I think that is, the I suppose the COVID experience,
Mm,
especially here in Ireland, and um, these fractures in society, we'll say, um, I felt on a personal level, and it's very much like what you're describing happened to you when you met. I suppose when you said, "Well, actually that's not true anymore for me," and I'm going here,
yeah.
and it is a very interesting thing because I think one of the things for me has been, you know, politics brought me to culture, culture then eventually brought me to spirit and um,
Mm,
examinations there. And there is very much a sense when you start talking in these areas, and it's literally like I think to summarize what you're saying is like the limits of science brought you to the door of God,
mhm.
really, our spirit, our consciousness, or whatever you think. So it's not really that, in one sense, it's not a massive jump, like
No.
it's for people to comprehend. Like, but I do get the sense people do have this kind of reaction on it. It's almost like a knee-jerk reaction against what you're doing. So yeah, personally, what's that been like for what was that? What were those early years like?
Well, I think they get upset that you're not on the same football team anymore. That's
Mm,
part of it. They want that camaraderie, and they think that you're one of theirs, and then you're not in their perception, which, I haven't changed. I just know that matter has consciousness. Like, that it's not, that's, to me, that's okay. I'm just going to move on from here. To them, that was not, that's not what it was. And you can see that with, everything that happened with COVID. Like, everybody was sectioning off as, I believe this but not this but not this but not this, and they're sectioning themselves off, and they wouldn't deal with anybody else that did not meet those qualifications
hmm.
as they're sorting through information. So they're not having that dialogue, but the entire way of looking at that, like, it created so much animosity that we couldn't have the dialogue. There was no way to bridge that until later. Now I'm seeing more people come around and actually understand where I was versus where they were, and we're reconnecting on those levels. I was lucky. My family is very, they'll hold space for people who don't see eye to eye. I grew up in a family with 5 religions. Yeah. And they've always been used to me not agreeing with a lot of what they said anyway, being a little atheist, and they're all their different religions or what, but they're all used to not agreeing with each other.
Hmm.
So it's not something that you bring to bear, and make it whether you like or dislike the person.
Hmm.
And I grew up around that. So for me to switch among all of these things and to eventually come into, like, I would kind of describe myself as omnist. I pull from a bunch of different things and find all the correspondences there, and then do more of like a historical dive into that or a spiritual dive into that, and try to put that information together and make it make sense, make it weave together in ways that, you'll see a lot of the different traditions have a lot of things that are similar,
Yeah.
and they just
Were
have different words for it.
you, were you drawn into any? Were you drawn towards any particular religious tradition on this journey of yours, and or not, or
No.
has it brought you through any or any stuff like that?
Well, I'll tell you, my father studied to be a rabbi and left it to become a race car driver. My mom is Greek Orthodox. Her mom was Church of England. We have family members who are Catholic, and we have other family members who are more spiritual like me. And I was the odd one out atheist. So it was just really interesting. Like, I also didn't want to choose, and I think they decided not to force me into choosing anything or force me into any specific direction, because it would have been a point of contention among everyone, which thing I would go. I don't know why specifically me, but it was like something about like that. So I chose none of the above, and then they got upset. So it was like all of them trying to convince me, just be something. Which is a weird conversation. Just be something. No, I'm nothing. Just be something. No, I'm not. And it was over the years, and now like I'm more spiritual. But no, I didn't pick anything conventional or organized.
And
And
what
now I look at
influence?
everything.
And what like from what you're saying there, you're towards readings, including tarot, that kind of stuff. What were major influences or readings or authors or works that were kind of pivotal or influential to you on the way, or have there been any, or has this been kind of a totally
In
your own
learning
journey?
tarot,
Yeah.
I well, really, as far as divination tools go, I could have picked up anything. But what I was guided to learn, the balance of energy, and it's easy to see it through the cards. So that's what I was shown, just because it's a really easy analogy to show, balance and disbalance, harmony and disharmony within interrelations, within, personal, societal, however you want to look at that, but to look at balances of energy and see that the way that they shift, but also to see, if I do this in the world and then I come back and look at the cards, how do the cards change? And watch the energy back and forth. And that's what I was doing to learn. I referenced a few things. Obviously I was like, looking up the meanings of the cards and the different ways that people put that together, and how they understand that. And different readers have massively different ways of doing this. Some just stick to the conventional meanings of the cards. Others will do it intuitively. So you'll have different decks that have different images, and they'll take the artwork on the specific cards into consideration, and take the original meaning of the card, but then also couple that with what they're seeing in the artwork, and read it intuitively that way. So you're matching up different types of artwork. Or, let's say you've got an image that seems to flow into the image of another card. When you hold them up together, that might say something to you, if you're more of the type of reader who sees that energy moving through the cards, through the artwork. For me, I'm very auditory. So using the cards, I'm more concerned with themes, and just picking up on, just using it as sort of a barometer. And I'm more, like I said, if I only had one tool to pick, it would be the music.
But I suppose it all comes back to you picking up the energy.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And on a personal level, like I'm just interested to know for myself, in your personal in your personal relationships with people in the world, are you a very are you very sensitive to people's, you're out shopping and you say hi to, are you very sensitive to people's energy when you meet them?
I can be, and I try not to go there because I don't want the other person to feel like I'm reading their energy when I haven't been given consent for that either. So I try to keep that barrier up, or I try, like, if it just happens to come through, I try not to say anything unless, I already know the person. I'm like, well, I'm picking up on this, do you want me to look? That kind of a thing. I try to go there with it. Sometimes it's way too loud.
Yeah.
And especially if it's meant for me to know, because I'm being warned. It's way too loud. And it'll just come through and I'll just be like, okay, look, this is this is what I see. It's here, that's it. And that's the people close to me, they just roll with it. They're very they're very copacetic with it, and they understand. And actually I think over time they were like, wow, this explains so much. Once I knew what was going on and what all of these different inclinations were, I was like, oh, it's just this. And they're, oh, that makes sense. That's weird. That makes a lot of sense.
How have you found the Substack experience, and how long have you been on it? With Starfire Codes.
I started July 2021. And I started out just writing different posts and writing readings. I started, I think, I want to say September of that year. So that didn't come about at first. It was more, I wanted somewhere to keep my stuff that I wasn't constantly getting flagged for censorship. And then eventually,
okay, why were you being flagged for censorship?
All the different things that I was posting on Facebook, I was getting, in Facebook jail a lot of the time. And then by the time I started writing my own articles, I ended up getting deplatformed from Twitter. Okay. So that happened too. The article that it happened on, I was reporting on the on Dr. Andreas Nowak when he was talking about graphene, and I ended up doing a live tweet of the article. And there was a spike in traffic. I had a few other spikes in traffic earlier than that. And I guess they saw the spike in traffic and what it was surrounding and just shut me down.
Wow.
And I had, I think, 100,000 followers at that point.
Oh, wow.
So it was, my whole configuration of what I had in place took a hit with that. But then I just, I just kept going with it, doing what I did anyway, because I figured that wouldn't come back. Then sure enough, once it was turned over, I was getting, and my account came back online. I was getting a lot of traffic, and then they started doing this limitation of reach for certain ideas thing, and I fell off. And the reason they did that, and I actually get into this in another article, was because they set a bar for how many views you would have per month in order to get monetized. And then they realized that certain people would have been qualified for that. So they knocked down their reach so that they wouldn't monetize the people that they didn't want monetized. And they did it in the background.
And this was pre-Musk, I take it, was it?
This is during Musk.
Oh, this is during Musk.
This is when they started monetizing. Yep. So they tied the hands of the people that they didn't want their accounts to qualify for that.
That's very interesting, because
I would have qualified.
Yeah. So there's a certain the people that do qualify then are actually kind of preordained to qualify, if you know what I mean.
Correct.
Okay, I haven't looked into that, because one of the features of Substack was that they had this back and forth with Twitter over about a year ago, where if you post Substack links on Twitter, they get no views.
Yes, yeah, they started doing that, and then I was running ads, and I could see that my ad traffic, I come from a digital marketing background, I could see that my ad traffic was not correct to the ratio of what I was actually getting. And I could see it in other places, that it didn't match up what they were claiming to give me versus what I was actually getting. And they were still charging me for that anyway. So I did a whole write up on this and showed all of my notes. And then I think the next day after I sent this out, Russell Brand came forward with it and did a video where he was talking about Yahurino saying that she was limiting reach. And then sure enough, like I put two and two together. I put like a little aside at the end, like an edit afterthought kind of a thing at the end about what he had said regarding that. And yeah, kind of that made the whole thing hit home. And I was, you know what, if I don't retweet the crap out of myself, basically, I'm not getting any reach. And
Mm-hmm.
it's not worth it for me to sit here and do that. So I'm just not going to use X anymore.
How are you finding Substack have kind of, it's almost like a Twitter type platform with notes and stuff. I see your Substack, you're quite active on Substack that way.
Yeah, I jumped right in. I started using it like I used to use Twitter, and it's been great. It's sort of the opposite of Twitter in energy.
Mm,
Because everyone on there is thoughtful and they're all writers and they're all, trying to understand things at a deep level. So everything that they write and say and all of the interactions there are a different type of interaction than what you see with, just sort of an open look at things and not really concentrated on that sort of energy type where you have on Twitter. It's,
it's
a lot
it's
with the animosity.
a lot of highly negative, you know, energy generation. Let's put it that
Yeah.
way.
Yeah. And intentionally, like, stoked through the algorithm of pitting people against each other and trying to get people addicted to going on there and fighting with each other. Whereas we don't really have that. I mean, some people will fight here and there, but they end up shutting it down. There's like, you're ruining my experience here and I don't want to see this. So I'm just going to block you. But, especially with that whole censorship versus no censorship thing, that kind of came up among everyone. But, I think mostly on both sides, I think the solution ended up being blocking people, which is fine. Who doesn't do that on any platform? If you don't want to hear from somebody, you block them, but you do it like an adult. You don't have to ban everybody. You just
Well, yeah, like if you're sitting in a restaurant with beside somebody who you don't want to sit beside, you just get up and leave.
yeah,
So,
exactly.
or they do. Um, just what are your thoughts on Elon Musk and that kind of his kind of stewardship of Twitter since? Do you see any improvements in Twitter pre-Musk and post-Musk?
I think in some ways it might be better for some, and in a lot of ways it's worse because the issues are more covert and people don't notice that they're happening. So people are cheering on something that's not to their benefit. I would
Mm,
put it that way.
okay.
They don't see that it's not to their benefit. They just think it's better because it's, they're able to use it again, or, they're able to say this, that, and the other thing. But, if they're getting no reach, nobody's seeing it, nobody, is able to use the tools in the way that they were designed. What's the point of even going on there? That's what I ended up coming to, that conclusion. If I have no reach, I can't even reach the people who are following me of their own volition. What's the point?
Mm. No, no,
Yeah.
you're right. Um, did you I take it then was a lot of your writing, you will say, you mentioned the graphing thing there with the vaccines, I assume. Did you
Mhm.
spend a lot of time down the kind of vaccine COVID rabbit hole in terms of writing, like
I
the rest
did.
of it?
And I was saying a lot of things that people still don't want out there, even though, they're showing so much of this now as far as the diving into the surface level narrative. I would say diving deeper into the surface level narrative, there's more narrative. And it's all smoke and mirrors to cover up what's actually happening behind that. And that's what I was focusing on. People do not like that. And that's where, I ended up getting flagged on a lot of this stuff because the things that I'm saying, neither side wants you to hear.
Okay.
So yeah, and that's why also I think that they figured out that they set parameters where people would be able to get monetized who had those sorts of opinions, and they needed to knock it back before they let them through. And so, choices were made with the algorithm to mess with people who would have otherwise qualified for monetization.
And yeah, no, I wasn't even aware of the monetization element of it, of Twitter. um, but I suppose where are you today? Like, I suppose, where are you today in terms of, and I suppose maybe and kind of add on is, you know, how do you process the world today? Energetically, what are you seeing? Or do you one of the things I'm kind of fixated on is the concept of kind of shadow work, or addressing inner kind of uh, parts of ourselves that are unhealed or traumatized or stuff like that. Is that part of your work, or is that part of your kind of thought process?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where I try to lead the people who are, following me, who are taking in my content, is to give them resources for that, and also to have ways to think that through for themselves, to take the elements of what I'm writing in the readings and apply them to themselves, in a growth focused way. That's why I try to add meditations to each one, to make sure that people are grounding that information, and really like going inward, and connecting with their own guides and their own intuition, because this is part of what needs to happen, to be taking in not just the readings in the right way, but to connect, and to bolster that connection, to feel the connection I wasn't taught to have. I guess that's what I'm trying to give people, is to know that that connection is their human birthright, and that through exercising that connection, they're able to have a two-way dialogue with the divine. It's not just I pray and I wait. It's I can ask for certain things, signs, things like that, to send me in a certain direction. I can choose what those are and form a shorthand with my spirit guides. I can take that information and determine what that is, and form that kind of a shorthand with the people who are guiding me, the energies that are guiding me beyond.
Hmm.
And we all have them. We all have our ancestors. We all have, the people who we've lost in our lives. Certain ones of them, their energy is more accessible than others, and to certain people. And we're able to develop that kind of a dialogue if we're paying attention to the world. And that's why, I don't honestly, you wouldn't even need any sort of objects as far as divination goes. You can just interact with the world and see it. If a radio were playing, as I'm walking from space to space, I would be able to pick up on the energy just from that.
Hmm. Would you vibe with the kind of idea of, energetically having a soul family,
Hmm.
like here, that you would like? I certainly have this sense of maybe 4 or 5 people that are like, we're very similar, like we're very energetically attuned.
Yeah.
Or do you kind of, I don't know, the way of saying it is, would you kind of have similar?
Yeah, resonance, dissonance, complementary energy, matches in energy, and there's that whole spectrum there. So you can have an energetic resonance with someone without being a match. It's a complementary energy where you sort of phase in and out of energy with that person. Sometimes you sync up, sometimes you don't, but you feel that connection. With matches, it's stronger. You can almost read each other's minds. Sometimes you can. You know what the other one's thinking. That's a match. Where it's dissonant, you can't even. It's like you're not even inhabiting the same space. And that's a lot of what happened during the COVID period. You would have people who are phasing in and out of each other's spaces that have they have no way of communicating with each other because they're so far removed from each other's wavelengths. It makes it
Hmm.
impossible.
Yeah, no, I suppose there was a lot of the COVID that looking back, will say in Ireland it was particularly, it was a very small cohort in Ireland that did not get vaccinated, less than 10%. And so those of us that were on that side of the fence will say, I won't speak for, I speak for myself, is like, I can see now that there's almost an energy difference between me and some of them. I don't mean all of them, but I mean, it's like I can't be like, okay, I know I can't be there. It's not going to be good for either of us. But
They're living in a different reality. Their
yeah,
experience of reality is different, and we're all inhabiting a concrete version of reality, but like
yeah,
our perception is changing that in such a way that we might as well be living in two completely different realities.
mm,
And the way that you're taking that information in, how you process it, the way you use your intuition within that, and whether the things that are within your body are causing different biochemical reactions, um, causing aggression in some instances, things like that. People have reported a lot about that. um, or causing pain, in other ways, like based on the things that are happening within them, and the different side effects that they've had, so that they've gone in different directions with that too. And anything, it doesn't have to be that. Anything in your life that influences you in that way is going to have that kind of an impact on the way that you deal with the people around you and the way you interact in general, let alone having it, worldwide, and everyone experiencing the same thing at the same time and picking sides.
yeah. Isn't you mentioned intuition there? Is intuition something you can train? Do you think?
Absolutely.
And how does one do that?
It, it's I think it's something that most people, like, unless they know that you can do that, they're not going to go after doing that. So
Okay.
it's you wouldn't really pursue it unless you know that it's something you can do. But with that said, um you do it by honing in on, I would really start with meditation, with hearing the observer versus the thinker, and getting into that kind of a mindset, and pulling in the information from the observer and quieting the thinker, and taking it in that direction, because that voice of the observer is where the intuition is coming in from. And it might be coming in from you or from your higher self. So which is part of like what you're saying about soul clusters and things like this. You have a higher self that, like, you can imagine it as like moving your avatar around down here, kind of a thing, and trying to get you to go in a certain direction. You refuse to go that way, and because they're trying to get you to do what you're supposed to do, and you're
Yeah.
not seeing it. So part of getting the signal to see what your higher self is trying to tell you to do, that's your intuition.
Hmm.
And you know which direction to go. The best thing that I can say, like, beyond like getting that sense of when you're in meditation, the observer versus the thinker, is that joy is your compass. If you are following your joy and not what's harming you, not your pain, not forcing yourself into situations where you're doing things just for the sake of doing them, but you're doing them because you feel called. You're doing them because you feel like that's why you're here, and it's bringing you joy to do them. When you move in that direction, everything starts falling into place. Your path will clear for you to go in that direction, and the breadcrumbs will start to align. And that's how you'll see it. That's what started to happen to me. It, like, when I started to go in that direction, once I started to understand about energetic balance, and once I started to really watch the direction I was headed with that, and make sure, okay, is this bringing me joy, or do I feel, pained? Like, even considering this situation, what direction is this taking me, and why? And once you see that, you'll know where to go. You'll know which direction to head in, because it'll be obvious.
Hmm.
You'll know the
Yeah.
difference.
No. Yeah. I'm with. Yeah. That kind of resonates as true. And the idea there you're saying about the thinker and the observer, and that slowing, your mind is not who your mind isn't your thoughts are not the truth necessarily, and the idea of the observer, the thought, your thoughts existing within, um, a I think the best way I've heard it described is your thoughts are like clouds in the sky, but the sky is the vastness of your, consciousness or whatever, but the quiet, and to be able to observe them without being drawn into them kind of
Yeah,
effort.
just to watch them flow by and not to grapple onto them or try to control them or, have any sort of interaction with them, just to let them flow. And then as you're watching them flow past, then you're realizing, I'm watching them flow past. So I'm thinking them while I'm also watching them. But those thoughts are, they're not me. And
Mm,
that's where, when that dawns on you, the thoughts are not me because I'm still here and there's the thoughts. Once you have that realization, you realize, okay, the part that's me, that's what I need to be listening to,
were
not
you a
that.
were you a or are you a person, or were you a person that had a very busy mind, or what was that? Sometimes my mind is like, it's like a roller coaster. Like, it's not easy to control it. And I think a lot of people have the same difficulty, especially, again, with the tech and stuff like that, is where,
Mm.
the thoughts are multiplying constantly in our minds, and it's very hard to rein them in sometimes. So that's, I suppose, where meditation comes in.
Yeah, but there's a lot of other ways that you can go about that, especially if you're not used to it, right? So maybe playing music so that your mind has somewhere else to go and not to sit in the quiet where your thoughts are. Once you're used to it, you can progress to that, to just sitting in complete quiet. But when you're first starting out, if you've got, some sort of gentle music playing where your mind is kind of dipping in and out of it, and then just remembering, like, every time you do follow a thought, don't get angry with yourself over it. Don't chastise yourself over it for following the thought. You just come back to center out. That was a thought. Focus on my breath again, and just refocus on that. And then you come back to center, and you're able to do it for longer periods of time once it becomes a habit. But sometimes if your mind is going like that, if you don't have something else to focus on, to kind of make a stopgap there, you're not able to sit in that energy because you'll keep following the thoughts.
Hmm. Yeah,
So
yeah.
it just becomes a way that you can kind of break that cycle. And then once you get used to breaking it, you won't need the music. You'll just be used to, okay, I need to come back to center.
Hmm. Well, I'm just looking at the clock here, and we've ticked over the hour already, so that's gone by very quickly. Um, Timmy, do you want to just maybe tell everybody once again your Substack, and anything, if you have anything or any podcasts and stuff like that that you want to mention?
Yeah, it's all in the same place. It's at starfirecodes.com. You can get to it from there. I have season 1 of my podcast up on there. I also have a section with podcast guest appearances that I've done. I have sections with the things that I'm reading, the things I'm watching, different memes that I'm dropping, but also the readings and the articles. It's all sectioned off through the
Yeah.
top. So whatever you're interested in, if you're not interested in the other stuff, you can find it immediately and it'll all be there. um yeah, and that's the main hub of where I keep everything, so you'll be able to find everything from there. You'll be able to book a reading from there, everything.
That's great. I just encourage everybody to have a look, and I'll have links to it in my own Substack and on the YouTube channel. So I'd just like to thank you once again, Demi Pietchell and Starfire Codes, and I'll just end the recording now.
Thank you so much.